I think is stabilized, which would tell us that we are just about there for everybody who's going to join us right at 7 o'clock. I apologize in advance for the over dramatic lighting. I'm in my new house. I recently became a resident of Ward 8, so I am just going to be a nightmare for the ward councillor, I'll tell you. But it's wonderful for me to be back in old Allendale. I grew up in Allendale Heights, so it's just a delight to be back here and to be joined by so many of you tonight on this town hall. So I'm Mayor Jeff Lehman, for anybody who doesn't know me, and with us tonight, of course, is Councillor Jim Harris, your ward councillor for Ward 8. Also on the line tonight is Sergeant Chris Allport, who's in charge of the Barrie traffic, the traffic unit at Barrie Police Service, and joining us tonight to answer any questions you might have specifically about those types of concerns. Also on the line tonight, we have the city CAO, Michael Prouse, and Lauren Wild and Nina Brincaccio from my office. And Lauren will be acting as our moderator once we get into the Q&A tonight. Please know, and I should note, that we are streaming tonight and also recording tonight's town hall so that you'll be able to refer back to it later, and so that others can watch who couldn't join us for the hour this evening. I will only make a few opening remarks, but a few things I really did want to say. You know, town halls are, we hold one of these, roughly one a month in each ward in the city, which allows myself and the ward councillors each to meet with our residents and answer questions. And it allows me to get around the city in the course of a year, moving from ward to ward. But of course, the work that particularly Jim does is day in and day out, and very much on local issues, as well as all of the issues that we're confronting as a city in the middle of, let's not forget, a 10-month-old state of emergency, and one that continues to evolve. Jim does incredible work, I think, for Ward 8, and is very responsive to local needs and not afraid to get on site and go out and see the issues for himself. But I don't often get the chance to do that. So these town halls are very, very valuable for me to hear about specific neighborhood issues, as well as your views on larger issues affecting the city. Where we are today, I should say a word on COVID. The city was recently moved into the orange level along with Simcoe, Muskoka, and that's, you know, since the beginning of the pandemic, we've seen the epicenters Toronto and Peel, Mississauga and Brampton, and then as you radiate out from there, the caseload decreases, and there are parts of northern and eastern Ontario where there's still virtually no caseload. That being said, we are at a very critical point in COVID. For the first time, there's some light at the end of the tunnel with vaccines and the potential for those to move into distribution in the first part of 2021, but we still don't know when that's going to be. And regardless, it's so important that we don't get tired and let down our guard, because unfortunately lives do depend on that. And we've unfortunately seen in the last couple of weeks congregate setting outbreaks here in Barrie, and that's where the virus becomes particularly deadly. So thank you to everybody on the call, and everybody, of course, in a city that has done very well to date with COVID. We've managed very well, and our economy has done well despite the virus. We continue to have some of our major employers expand, and businesses have pivoted to deal with it. But if the virus does spread further and we go into higher levels of lockdown, we know it will get even more challenging for our businesses. That being said, I really do want to thank everybody and urge you to continue to follow that guidance of public health, which continues to evolve day to day. In the neighborhood, I know there are probably some specific issues I know that people want to talk about tonight, and we're here to answer those questions as best we can. If we can't answer your question tonight, please email us at officeofthemayor@barrie.ca. Lauren and Nina take all of the emails. We do get a lot, but we always respond, and we try and provide follow-up information as best as we can, or refer you to where you can get information, whether that's on public health or schools or whatever the matter might be. But if it's a question that Jim or I can't answer for you tonight, or the sergeant or Michael can't answer for you tonight, we will get back to you, and you can email us your contact details. We're happy to do that. We recognize also in an hour together, we may not get to everything, so we're happy to follow up. With that, I wanted to hand it over to your ward councillor. It's been such a pleasure to work with Jim, who brings his executive experience with CMHA to the position, but a Barrie boy and a long history in the community and a real commitment to his part of the city. I've come to rely on him on many issues, both simple and more complex. And I appreciate that we were able to do this tonight together. So Jim, I'll hand it over to you for some opening remarks.
Mayor Lehman, thank you for those kind comments. They mean a great deal. So thank you again. And thank you everybody for attending. It's an honor to be a Ward 8 resident and a Ward 8 councillor. And in true Ward 8 fashion, we have set the record by far for the biggest attendance at a virtual town hall. Most of the other town halls were combined town halls, several wards together, I think 3 actually together. And we have overpassed the other ones by a wide margin. So thank you again to the residents of Ward 8 who are engaged and involved and committed to making a better community for each and every one of us. So thank you for that. This is actually my second virtual town hall. I had one with the Talented Neighborhood Group, which was wonderful. So I appreciate that. But I'm thinking back to my last town hall as a City of Barrie official town hall, and it was in February 2020. And I remember bringing some information from the health unit about this disease that was starting to percolate in the world. And here we are today, all these months later, having dealt with COVID and, learned so much. And I also want to say thank yous. I really want to thank the mayor again for being here tonight. It's a great opportunity to have him here to hear the questions and to respond to residents. Thank you to Officer Allport. Many calls revolve around police and the actions, activities, and services you provide. So thank you for being here. It would not be nearly as effective without you. And thank you, CEO Prowse. CEO Prowse attended my last town hall at the rec center, and he's our #1 guy at City Hall. So he's a great resource to have here. So thank you, CEO Prowse. Now, as we know, a long-serving Barrie City Councillor, so a wealth of information and a great guide to all of us councillors, because he's been there, done that, and done it so well for so many years. And finally, to Nina and Lauren, thank you so much for making this happen and leading us through this tonight. We appreciate your support as always with all things. As a councillor, it's great to have the support of the mayor's office staff. And just quickly before I move to questions, I know it's important to you guys to not hear me, but to hear your questions, and me too. There's 3 really big activities right now happening for feedback from residents. #1, the budget feedback tool is on the City of Barrie website right now, the budget allocator tool at Building Barrie or barrie.ca. You can find that. Have your say on this year's budget. It's critically important. Also, the official plan, we're redoing the official plan. And again, on Building Barrie, you can have your say and look at it. It's 237 pages, so lots of great information. But please check in to see where you can have your feedback as a resident. And Ward 8 is such a dynamic and eclectic ward with so much that makes us different, unique, with waterfront, with industrial area, with historical areas, and small beaches and lots of things. It's an incredible award to be a part of. And also Barrie Police, and Officer Allport will maybe reference this, but community safety survey is available right now on www.barriepolice.ca/survey. So have your say in community safety in our city as we move forward. So thank you for that. And at that note, look forward to hearing your questions and hopefully being able to answer them effectively for you. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. So tonight is for you to ask questions and us to answer them as best as possible. So I'm going to hand it over to Lauren, who is going to, there have been a number of questions that were submitted ahead of time. Thank you to all those who did. We do have many, but we're going to alternate between those pre-submitted questions and people asking live tonight. So you can put your hand up using the hand function on Zoom if you know that. That's the way to ask a question, and Lauren will move through those as best we can. So Lauren, let's go straight into the questions.
Certainly, Mayor Lehman, thank you very much for that. And just to let people know, if you don't feel comfortable speaking during the meeting, you can also submit a question through our Q&A box, and I'd be happy to read it on your behalf. As well, for those joining us by phone, please note that if you press *9, you can raise your hand, and *6 will unmute you. So first we'll go to Joanne. Joanne, you have your hand up. I'm going to allow you to speak if you can unmute yourself and join the conversation.
Great. Thank you so much for this opportunity. And I'm a resident of Ward 8, and I just want to let you know that I've actually met with you a while ago, both Mayor Jeff, and I'm a member, the vice chair of a new group called for the Huntington Society of Canada. We have a new chapter, and we're affiliated with the Huntington Society of Canada. So I wanted to let you know that we got our charter, so to speak, in March, just so we wanted to have a flag raising with the city as we've done before to celebrate it. But we didn't get to do that for obvious reasons. But I wanted to let you know that because it is a good news thing. It's kind of been a hidden disease in Simcoe County, and now that makes it a little more public. So in addition to letting you know that, I just wanted to also say that I'm hoping maybe next April we can do a flag raising again. It's just important to raise awareness. We're not actually asking for anything. We just want to be here to help our community and raise awareness about that, and that would be really good to do that. And I wanted to thank you, Jim. You helped one of our members with an issue of accessibility at the rec center, and just wanted to thank you for that, being such a good counselor, and just share our good news, and that we're not asking for anything. We're here to here to help members of our community who are affected by that terrible disease. So thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for the great work you do. I do remember meeting with you, Joanne, and we look forward to doing a flag raising and helping out the Huntington Society as we can as you go forward with the chapter. So thank you for doing that work for the people who will surely benefit from having that in the community.
And thank you, Joanna. And I must say, at the City of Barrie, we're a team. And one thing I will say, and I'm pleased to say, the city staff do an incredible job. And when the gentleman reached out to me, and I had the city contact them right away, and they contacted him. And so kudos and credit to city staff, and thank you for reaching out to me. But they are wonderful, and they really did a great job of helping that individual get the rec services they need for their health and well-being. So kudos to staff.
Thank you both. I just wanted to let everyone know on the call, Councillor Harris, we have 68 people on the call. People are very interested in knowing that number. So wanting
Awesome.
just to share that with everyone. Next, we're going to have Sarah. Sarah, if you can unmute yourself, we'd be happy to. If you can limit to one question, just so that we can get it through as many as possible. Thank you, Sarah.
Not a problem. Thanks for having me on here, everyone. Hi, Jeff. Hi, Jim. And
Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Barrie, please. My question is, with everything going on right now with COVID and with the kids and Jeff, by the way, welcome to the neighborhood, or welcome back to the neighborhood. With all the teenagers at Innisdale, and my daughter being one of them that goes to Innisdale, and with the new COVID, they've got 2 COVID cases there today. And is there anything that the city can do to help the high school with all the students hanging out at the plaza? I know they're going into the businesses and they're not doing the social distancing. Is there anything that the city can do to help with that?
Yeah, I can start, and then Jim may want to jump on. I know Barrie Police and MLEO Municipal are aware of this one. The school, they have spoken with the school. The school is also pretty frustrated. The plaza has private security. Russell Security has somebody who's walking around on site in a vest trying to break it up when they get a tough situation. And unfortunately, we have had BPS out on a number of occasions. It's frustrating, Sarah. But I think we are trying to assist on a case-by-case basis. I guess I'm not sure Barrie Police can actually station someone there on all the breaks, because that's a little too much. But the plaza owner has actually got a security guard who's supposed to be there. And I have seen them. I mean, I'm through that intersection at least twice a day, and I do see the security guard breaking things up from time to time. Jim?
Thank you, Mayor Lehman, and thank you, Sarah. And I don't have an answer. I may be just offering other options, but I'm wondering about our trustee, our school board trustee, and then even a conversation with the school board themselves as far as how they stagger and manage class assignments and breaks and those kind of things. But yeah, I again, as you know, I live very close to Innisdale, and it is concerning to see the volume and then the inability with the volume to effectively distance. And so it is a challenge, but maybe have you reached out to Is it Miss Wilson, our trustee?
No, I haven't. I've actually talked to Brian, the principal,
Okay.
and just wanting to get. I know I've personally pulled them out of school because of the
Okay.
COVID stuff, but my concern is with all the kids being there, and I've seen, and Jeff and I have seen the security guard, but they're usually standing up against the wall. I've never seen them actually going and doing anything. So.
Yeah, I've seen it a couple of times, but I'm sure it depends on the guard. I mean,
Yeah.
I find some are less willing to be proactive. But
Yeah.
you know what, Sarah, I hear this enough. I mean, we may need to write some tickets, and that's a harsh way to learn the lesson. It's a big ticket. But
Yeah.
we did it through the spring, and if the problems continue, it's certainly an option we have.
I know other schools, I can correct me if I'm wrong, but other schools are not allowing their kids to leave the school during the lunch hour because it's between 10 and 10:40. That's when they're all there.
Yeah.
So maybe we can look at maybe asking the school board if we can have them say no leaving the school at lunchtime. I know it's not helpful to the businesses, and believe me, you know me, I'm a big supporter of all of our businesses, but yeah.
Okay. I mean, that presents as an option. What they do or not, I don't know. But the ask is if other schools are doing it, and if there's precedent, I don't.
Yeah. You know. Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, I was a bit surprised they do too. So we will follow up with the school again, Sarah. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Jim.
Thanks for that, Sarah. So we've got a couple of submitted questions around the historic Allendale Station site. Just a couple of questions with regards to why were there delays after it was refinished? Why is there archaeological activity there? And is there still plans to move transit?
Oh boy, I could fill up an hour easily. And Michael Prose is smiling behind his black screen, I can tell you. So I'm going to give you the 3-minute version because I know there's lots of interest and questions. The Allendale Station site has been used by first the Huron-Wendat people and then the Anishinaabe people for at least 700 or 800 years prior to the arrival of Europeans. As a result, there are various artifacts on the site. It is likely that at some point there was some burial site in the area of the Allendale Station, perhaps not on the station lands itself, but in that corner of the lake, because there have been bone fragments that have been found there. They likely were disturbed probably 100 years ago when the area was washed out in severe storms, or when the station buildings themselves were built, and the proper care wasn't taken back then of when you unearthed bones. So the city committed to both the Huron-Wendat people and the Anishinaabe, which is the Chippewas of Rama, that we would do the proper archaeology to ensure that if there were any remains found, they were treated with the same dignity that we would treat digging up any cemetery or discovering any human remains anywhere in the province of any race or creed. That archaeology is extremely painstaking in terms of its the time that it takes to do it properly, and we're still at it, and COVID has slowed it down. So that's the short version on where it sits. I will say on a positive note, and I think Michael would say this too, our relationship with the Huron-Wendat, who are actually now headquartered in Quebec City, in Wendake, and with Rama is excellent. And the city, I think they would tell you, has been working very well to do what's right on the site. The goal is to complete the archaeology and then to recognize the Indigenous history of the site, and then be able to move ahead with its use. But obviously, pending the completion of the archaeology, which we committed to do right before we started to pave any more of the site or use the buildings, we have to finish that, and it takes a long time. The status with regards to, I'm sorry, was the third part the transit piece, Lauren?
Yes, it was.
Yeah. So both the provincial and federal government have announced funding for a new bus building, which will be on Essa Road. That will provide the kind of hub that exists at the downtown terminal today. However, there will be some significant differences with how it operates. And I know one of the fears that comes with a new bus building is, will we see illicit activity or crime associated with the presence of a bus facility? I mean, lots of cities, the bus terminal can be not always the best spot in the city. A couple of things I would say to that. First of all, the location of the bus terminal right now is in the middle of the part of the downtown that has got the greatest social issues. So I think the concern about what happens at the bus terminal is wrapped into the challenges we're facing in that 3 or 4 block area of downtown. I'm not sure they migrate. And I think that some of the activity that people are concerned about, frankly, is more likely to remain where it is in the downtown than move just because the bus hub is there. I'm not sure there's a direct relationship between transferring Barrie Transit buses and the social problems that exist. I think the one connection that I've often heard made is, will there be drop-offs from Central North Correctional at that location? That remains to be seen. But one of the things that we're continuing to talk to the ministry about is, the reason they occur at the Barrie bus terminal, and by the way, those folks are now required to get on a bus, although some of them, once they're free, are able to make the decision to not get on the bus. But now that the county of Simcoe has a transit system, we could actually have them doing these releases in Penetanguishene and Midland and Orillia and the places that are served by county transit. So that, in my opinion, is what should happen, rather than it constantly being to Barrie, whether that's to downtown, to the South End GO station, to the Allendale GO station, or otherwise. In terms of the building itself, it's in pre-design. I don't think it'll be in operation for at least 2 years. But that is ultimately the goal, that the building will get built and we will have a single consolidated active transportation and transit hub where you can get off a Barrie Transit bus and onto a GO train and go to Toronto and come back. And that's the long-term future for the site. Yeah. Jim, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, thank you, Marilyn, and for the detail. And I do believe that this is a different opportunity with the transit hub in Allendale. And I think the big key is the connection to the GO and Metro links. And I don't know if probably through COVID you haven't been down, but certainly with the GO station in Toronto, it is quite a nice building, and with shops and a lot of opportunities. So I am hopeful, and with the opportunity to revitalize Allendale through transit, which was its birth, right, through the rail. So I think there's a great opportunity with the GO and the transit hub being there, that this will be a shot in the arm for an area. And if those of us who have been born and raised in Barrie remember Allendale, and it had its own downtown. There was a famous quote from the mayor of Allendale talking about, the streets of Allendale would be paved with gold, while the streets of Barrie would be paved with dirt. So, Allendale has a proud heritage, proud history. So we look forward to opportunities to see Allendale continue to grow and prosper. And I think there's opportunity in this transit hub to do just that.
As a footnote, I think you're right, Jim. I think it will bring more potential customers, and especially for those businesses that serve a population that are waiting to get on a train, families and so forth. But I think the other piece is, if you haven't had a chance to take a look, the renderings of the new building, the concept plan anyways, on the city's website, I think it's quite attractive. It's designed in a historic style that really match Weagland Law and the farmhouse building and perhaps the Allendale station itself. That was the idea, that we would really contribute to that historic character of what remains of downtown Allendale. That's right.
Hope that answers your question.
Thank you for that. Thank you. We have a question with regards to speeding and noisy vehicles. Is there any tools that we can use in order to control some of the vehicles and motorcycles that are excessively noisy? And any thoughts on photo radar in areas of concern around the city?
Oh, okay. I'll answer the second one, then I'm going to hand it over to Chris and Jim and Chris can talk about Operation Noisemaker, which we conducted this summer against loud vehicles. But the second piece, council will be considering, I've forgotten, Michael, if it's coming this cycle or the next cycle of council, a staff report on automated speed enforcement in school zones. And council will have the opportunity to move forward with that. Doesn't mean it's going to happen overnight, but we will have a decision point in the next 2 or 3 weeks as to whether we introduce or proceed with planning for and deploying automated speed enforcement, which has been very successful in Toronto. So on the noisy vehicles, Chris, I don't know, do you want to talk about Noisemaker over the summer and what BPS continues to try and do? It's been a real problem since COVID. I've really noticed it. I don't know if it's because the world is quieter or there's more loud vehicles, but it's definitely different since COVID.
Yeah, certainly the modified vehicles have kind of come to the forefront in relation to the noise that they're making. Project Noisemaker is kind of a provincial initiative because it's not isolated to this community. It's kind of like a provincial, province-wide issue that's been identified. So it's that Project Noisemaker is just an opportunity to provide education to the motorists on what's lawful and what's unlawful in relation to the enforcement of improper mufflers and unnecessary noise and so forth. So we've been using our social media when we come across these type of devices that are put on cars to kind of educate motorists on what's lawful and what's unlawful, which has created a lot of discussion amongst the social media within our sites. As far as the enforcement of it, it's not a decibel level type parameter. It's just a subjective. So an improper muffler would be something that doesn't muffle the noise, which that constitutes improper muffler, because a muffler is designed to muffle the noise of a vehicle, and as soon as it doesn't, then it becomes improper. So despite it being modified, it's still going to be improper, unfortunately. So the only thing I think moving forward is just the continued education and continued enforcement of that section within the Highway Traffic Act to hope to get compliance.
Thank you. And I would say this council has, this is not the only ward where safety, street safety is a concern. So I can't speak for other councillors, but I do know that I feel confident that there's a lot of support for measures to calm traffic and reduce speeds on roads and find methods. And I think there's definitely support and interest in the school zones. And also I know that radar speed boards and they tell you how fast you're going, and they're a friendly reminder for those of us who want to be respectful of those speeds and sometimes are not as attentive as we should be, but they work, and numbers we get do show that they reduce the speed. So that's a tool that we can use that just cues people to be able to mind their speed when they're in their areas. And I also know for us in Allendale and Tollendale area, Maness Point area, McLaren, Yates, Foster, there's no sidewalks. So for many of us, we recognize that when we walk in our neighborhoods in Allendale and around this Ward 8, we have that significant difference where there's areas that aren't urbanized, there's areas that are urban, but for whatever reason, it's always interesting with the history, and it's not that old of subdivision really, over by Allendale Public School and St. John Vianney, that there's a lot of streets with no sidewalks. So, we can effectively, hopefully creatively use speed cushions in those areas. Over time, they will, adjustments will be made, but we do have some challenges and we're aware of them. And right now we have in Barrie Police Services, I think it's called a Black Cat device that they've installed on White Oaks to capture some speed volumes, again, to help with just getting some data on how fast are people going. They designated Maness Point area as an aggressive driving area. They're keeping an eye. So Barrie Police Services, and I know Officer Alport has asked us for areas where we have concerns. So please email me, jim.harris@barrie.ca, if you have an area you're seeing a bump in speeds. We recently, there's pros and cons to everything. We had a wonderful paving project on Harold Drive, but this nice new smooth blacktop sure made it easier to go fast. So we put up a radar speed board, and I'm pleased to hear that residents explained to me that has worked. People have started to mind their speed on that nice new fresh blacktop that they really wanted, but now it's facilitating easier zooming around their streets. So there's tools we can use, and if we know you have concerns, please let us know. There's also a new traffic calming, speed cushion link where you can go on. You can suggest where you'd like a speed cushion on the City of Barrie website. So please check that out. if you want a speed cushion in your area, you can suggest you'd like one. So there's a few options, and we continue to like your feedback. You tell us what's like in your neighborhood. We know from your feedback what we need to do. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Mayor Lehman, the report is on Monday's circulation for general committee.
Thank you, CEO Prowse. So we're going to go to Arnie, who's got his hand up. I'm just going to add you to the chat. If you can unmute yourself.
Hi, good evening.
Go ahead.
Thank you all for hosting this event for all of us. I know 68 or so folks on here, so I'll be quick. Just wondering if there's a follow-up on the old Barrie Fairgrounds. I attended the virtual meeting here back in the fall and or summer, I guess it was August or whenever it was. And there was kind of hinted that perhaps there would be some sort of movement or answers, maybe not answers, but some sort of perhaps more information on the fairgrounds in Osmington's possible their proposal for the area. So that could be addressed. I'd appreciate that.
So I'm going to hand that to Jim because I suspect you may be a little more up to date than me.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Arnie. I sent an email to the fellow from Osmington today, but I didn't get a response yet. But yeah, I mean, I expect that they'll be coming back soon. They, you know, the proposal I believe has changed somewhat, and given the feedback from residents, certainly it's seen as a piece of land that, well, those of us who've been around Barrie see it as a very important piece of land, especially because of what was there before, fairgrounds and raceway and recreation and activity. So it has a real important part in our heart. It's not going to be that. It's going to be residential with commercial and mixed use, but they plan for a park around the perimeter and some interesting features. The curling club will remain as part of that feature, which is really important. Again, another historical kind of landmark for our community. The S Road Curling Club, or now Barrie Curling Club. I don't have a lot of details, Arnie. I apologize. We'll follow up afterwards because I have an email out to the principal from Osmington just about where they're at. So I apologize for not having anything further for you today.
Can you touch upon what changes they were proposing, or you kind of hinted there's some changes that they're looking at?
Yeah, I think it was more around in the townhouse area. I know they were really going to focus reducing density as it got towards Campbell Avenue, so that the more density was obviously towards the highway. I believe they're still keeping the seniors residence, which would be closest to the highway, and which I was surprised that that's seen as best practice because seniors like to have that activity of the highway as a visual. So I thought that'd be noisy, but actually that's seen as a positive in senior development. So I think it's just around, and there's some tweaking around the curling club. I don't have the detail, but certainly the building will sit as it is. It's a matter of parking lot and where they sit. And I think there's some planning to do with the SRO Curling Club that they'd like to do to sort those details up, because they came, obviously, if you were at the meeting, and we remember that the Curling Club had some concerns and issues that were really important to them that they're working on. I don't have those details, but Arnie, I would be happy to follow up. I really would. So please reach out and we'll connect.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. So we have a couple of questions with regards to the current use of the Comfort Inn, whether the Busby Centre is planning on continuing operations there, and what are the things that we can do to enhance the safety measures as some of the residents are feeling uneasy or seeing different activities occurring, including drug use and break-ins.
Sure, let me start, and again, Jim may want to chime in. So to the first part of the question, the Comfort Inn won't be used long term in that way. No, the Comfort Inn is being rented by the Busby Centre and Elizabeth Fry Society as a temporary COVID shelter because of the need to separate individuals in shelter physically to distance them. So it is serving as an emergency shelter, basically, instead of the Out of the Cold program that used to be in churches and then at 88 Mulcaster. The County of Simcoe, who fund those operations, has recently announced that they're going to lease a building at Georgian Green, rent one of the student residence towers until August, so that they can start moving people out of the Comfort Inn. Now, that is not to ultimately empty the Comfort Inn. That is because, unfortunately, the Comfort Inn is already full. And we have more people now that the weather's getting cold, where it's becoming a matter of literally life and death to come inside. And they can't come inside into a congregate setting the way you could during pre-COVID. So it's all temporary. And I think for those who are concerned about that being a long-term use, it's not. In the meantime, though, I saw the post in the community board around the bike that was found there that belonged to a resident and so forth. And that's very concerning to me. Obviously, there's no tolerance for anybody, regardless of where they live, stealing from anyone else. And I know there is a temptation to tie those residents to crime, and like any population, unfortunately, there are criminals among a homeless population as there are among a wealthy population. But I can only say this, that because the Comfort Inn is literally down the hill from police headquarters, there's no lack of attention paid to either issues on site or when there is a resident at the Comfort Inn who is found to have stolen property or something like that. It gets the full attention of Barrie Police. And while that may not give you a sense of assurance for those who may have had a vehicle break-in or something else recently, I know it's very tempting to assume it's because of the Comfort Inn. And I'm not going to tell you that it isn't residents from the Comfort Inn that have at times done some of these things, for sure. I can only say that, I've always felt that our charities in the city, they may not always be welcome neighbors when they are serving a marginalized population, but we should try and be as welcoming to them as we can, because these are folks who, if they are seeking shelter, usually are seeking help and are trying to turn their life around. There are some people, unfortunately, and I can tell you that nobody makes the Busby folks angrier than, or your mayor, angrier than people who abuse the system or abuse the hospitality or generosity of those charities. And unfortunately, there are always a few. But please recognize as well, there are a lot of folks in the marginalized population who are marginalized on the street because they have a combination of mental health. It's 80% of the Busby Center's clientele have some mental health issue. And or addictions and or a health issue, and often the intersection of all three. And as a consequence, there are people who do need help. And it's really unfortunate because whenever there's something like that bike that was found there, I just sort of bury my face in my hands and think, boy, that's going to give the place a terrible reputation, and it makes people struggle to feel safe in there with the neighbors. But I can tell you that the folks who operate the place are constantly watching for this, and there is no tolerance for it. So if you see something, please do report it. But please do also try and understand that we are in the middle of a pandemic. They need to be in a distance setting, and that will continue until the pandemic is over. Best guess on that, folks, by the way, for all those watching, is second quarter of next year, so sometime between March and June, that life will begin to return to normal, and organizations like the Busby Center will be able to return to their previous model of operations. In the meantime, though, George and Green will allow them to start moving some folks out, but we do expect that with the number of people who are still sleeping out on the street in Barrie, or more commonly in the natural areas around the city like Milligan's Pond, that there will still be more demand until the end of COVID. Jim, is there anything else you wanted to mention on this? I know you've been active on it too.
Yeah, you handled, your answer was great. I don't have much to add, but I will say that for the people that have emailed me about this, and I want to say I was really appreciative of the compassionate approach. Something had happened in your neighborhood that you didn't like, and you have every right to not like somebody going into your car and taking things of your person. But the great and some litter and things happening around the area but I really appreciated the compassionate response, not just get these people out of here, but what can we do to address some of the concerns. And I really think that's important to note. And yes, we've had contact, and Inspector Kevin McLean responded right away. And for those of you I haven't spoken to about this or had contact with, please share with your neighbors that the Barrie Police Services were very quick to respond and to do active patrols. Again, nice that in that sense that they're very close, and they do make active stops at the Comfort Inn. They've always been Busby supporters connected, so they're not unfamiliar to Busby when they were downtown. We're on Collier or further more on Mulcaster most recently, and they have a good connection as well. So I've also spoke to Sarah Peddle, the ED, as well, and they had put together a little cleanup crew, again, just to kind of, again, to be good neighbors. And as they're here, while they're here in Ward 8, we hope that they will be good neighbors. And if we have issues, please do not hesitate to contact me, and I'll be happy to speak to Barrie Police Services and see what we can do to ensure that we're not having negative outcomes related to this temporary use of the Comfort Inn by Busby.
Thank you, Councillor. We've got Shelley with her hand up. I'm going to allow you to talk. If you can unmute yourself, Shelley.
Hi, good evening. Thanks very much for giving me the chance. I've got a couple of thank yous before I have a question. I really want to thank Jim Harris for all the great work. I am one of those people on Harrell Avenue that wanted the paving done, and I know the speed sign came after, but I really want to thank you for all your communication and your due diligence to get that done. So thanks. And also, I just want to, very thankful for living here in Barrie and all that we are doing for COVID. I think I am going to the Allendale Rec Center, and I want to say, a big thank you to all of them. They are really adhering to all the protocols on a daily basis, and they're doing a fantastic job. So I just want you to know that. And lastly, my question is, living in Ward 8 and on the waterfront and the lakefront has been frigging awesome in COVID, because there's so many people that are walking down there. And I noticed the last time I went down there that there are two paths, and some got a lot of people with dogs and some are more pedestrian. But I noticed that last time I was there are signs to say that for winter maintenance, they will not be shoveling the from the south center down towards the marina. They will not be shoveling the path closest to the water. And my ask is, if they are shoveling the one, which you can see, 20 feet above, it would be awesome for the winter with all of us trying to get out for COVID and walk, if we could have both of the pathways shoveled. I know it would be an extra turnaround for the guy in the sidewalk, Caterpillar, whatever, but that would be just awesome, because I'm so grateful for being able to walk along the waterfront.
That's a great comment. And actually, I think we'll make Deputy Mayor Barrie Ward shovel it by hand. I mean, it's good exercise, great way to stay fit.
It could be
he's in my Rotary. He's in my Rotary.
Oh, he's in Rotary. Oh, perfect. So now I'm going to get tattled. You're going to tell him I said that, right?
I'm in his Rotary and he's in mine, so I'll ask him.
Okay.
Thank you, Jeff
Michael,
Lehman, and welcome to the neighborhood. And very much thank you, Jim Harris, for a fantastic job that you're doing for all of us.
Thank you.
Thanks for that. And Michael's on the call. I won't commit to it now, but it's certainly something that sounds like we could maybe manage as an operational measure. And thank you for the COVID perspective, because I do think I'm always amazed, even in marginal weather. I was down there with Cassie when in the snow on the weekend, and there were still hundreds of people walking around the waterfront. So we'll certainly look if we can maintain more paths this COVID winter. And thanks for the suggestion.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is an example where 75 heads are better than one. We now have 75 people on this call. So great suggestion. Thank you, Shelley.
Probably a lot of people nodding in their living room, right?
Yeah, what a great suggestion. Thank you.
I'm already working on it.
There you go.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. So we'll have Greg has his hand up. So we're going to add him to the call. Can you unmute yourself,
Hey, Greg.
Hello.
How are you?
Can you hear me okay? I'm well, thank you.
We can hear you. Yeah, go ahead.
Hello, Councillor Harris. Nice to see you. So yeah, my name is Greg Stevenson. I live in Ward 8 proudly with my 68 colleagues on the phone. So that is really impressive. My question, two things, a comment and a question. I'm amazed with so many people And these, I know, are tough to organize, but it'd be awesome to think of maybe doing another one sooner rather than later, because I suspect we won't be able to get to everything. But my question here, and I know I need to be quick, it's the topic of, I'm going to term this as supply and demand for parking spaces. And this won't be a surprise to Councillor Harris, but with the reality of increased density, intensification along the Yonge Street corridors, certainly my interest. It's not that I'm against the intensification, it's just the thinking about the parking. And the most recent development is 481 Yonge Street. And the plans were approved for 1 residential spot per family. So I've sent numbers into council from a comprehensive Stats Canada survey for Barrie. It was dated November 2017, pretty recent. And according to my calculations, it really supports 1.5 cars per family, and a statistic of 85% of residents who are working rely on a car to drive themselves to get to work. So I want to ask the question, which numbers do you believe, first of all, and why? And then the second part of this is, well, let me please answer that question, and I'll if I have time, I'll follow up. But I'm curious for that question.
Sorry, I was trying to find some notes. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I can repeat. So, Councillor Harris, the question was, if we calculate from Stats Canada, November 2017, you look at the dependency on cars, you look at the average age, epidemiology of working, who relies, and you can, I can go through those calculations with you, you can challenge that, but just for the sake of argument, assume I'm right. It determines that on average, a family will need 1.5 cars. So that's what the statistics are telling us. Yeah. Does Barrie believe, are they using these sorts of statistics to help them with these decisions when they approve a property like 481 Yonge Street with 67 units, and they are planning for just 1 residential parking spot? And I say residential, not including visitor parking or handicap. So spots where a family can depend on to park their car.
Yeah, I think some of the ones, for example, where there's lower parking requirements, they're in intensification zones, and this is obviously a corridor that you're speaking about with 41 Yonge. And I would say it's also about the size of the unit. So the Stats Can wouldn't necessarily, I don't think, drill down, Greg, to the size of units. So is that a 4-bedroom home, 3-bedroom home, where you would have more people and therefore, more cars? Some of these developments are single, like 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom. Majority or all of the units are in that 2 to below 1-bedroom size. Was that part of the calculations, Greg? Does that make sense?
Well, the question is, did they propose to you an explanation from their point of view on the basis of the unit size? So we're all guessing here. So the best we can do is with the information we have. In the traffic report that they published, their rationale for the parking spots was a, quote, reduced dependency due to bike lanes and transportation infrastructure.
Transit, yeah.
So that's a supposition. That's a supposition. It hasn't been substantiated with data. So all I can rely on right now is the data from Stats Canada for Barrie. And I want to emphasize, this is for Barrie residents. It's very rigorous. It's the best information we have. And this isn't just for 481 Yonge Street. This is for all the properties that are now going to be developed along the corridor. And so my question Go ahead. No, I'm
sorry. I stopped you right before your question. Go ahead, Greg.
No, I have nothing more to say. I'm interested, Mayor.
Okay. Let me just give you a quick perspective, and this is worth a longer conversation after tonight. So Jim's right. I mean, unit size determines the average household size, which then usually determines vehicle ownership. The smaller the unit, the fewer the residents, typically the fewer the cars, the more likely the household is to only have 1 vehicle. The more 3 or 4 bedroom apartments you have, or the more townhouses, certainly more single detached, you're into multiple vehicles. So we do have ratios and data on that, and I do think that is something that we can share with you, but we'll probably do that offline after tonight.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. We have a submitted question with regards to property taxes for 2021. Are there any thoughts on zero increase for this upcoming year, or looking to status quo? And is there any way that people may be able to defer their taxes or get a break of some kind?
Thank you for the question. The quick answer, the budget direction that council gave our staff was for 1.95%. I know for people struggling either with being laid off or COVID related costs or otherwise, even that will be a huge challenge. A couple of things I would offer. Council will certainly be looking to put downward pressure on whatever tax rate increase the draft budget comes in at, I'm sure. Our ability to do that and still cover the COVID related costs that the city needs to incur to keep everyone safe in our services through police, fire, rec centers and everything, that remains to be seen, but we will know very shortly because the draft budget is coming to council in about 3 weeks. The decision will be made early in 2021. If you are over 65 in the city of Barrie, you can choose to freeze your property taxes. Now we do accrue the increases every year, and they have to be paid when you sell your house. A lot of people don't know we have that program. It is designed so that seniors who are on a fixed income never need be taxed out of their house because they can delay the payment of any tax increase until their house is sold. And that amount, accrues over time, but it does take some time to become a significant amount. So that is an option for anybody who's a senior or who's on fixed income and struggling at any point with property tax increases. But as next year goes, I can assure you council will be working very hard to keep the tax increase as low as possible and certainly recognize the unique COVID situation. Footnote on the deferment, we don't have plans to offer another deferment. We did do that, of course, at the start of COVID. I think we'll have to see how the second wave goes in terms of the impact on everyone's finances. But believe it or not, during COVID, tax arrears went down. So thank you, Barrie. Incredibly, more people paid their property taxes this year than last year, which is really quite amazing. Jim, anything you wanted to say on that?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Lehman. Certainly, I know that council I've spoken to certainly are sensitive to the tax number this year and also the cost of COVID to the city. And for those of you who have attended council meetings recently and watched, you will be aware that the city staff have done a very good job, and we're very proactive early on to make really difficult decisions that helped us be in a position that is much better than it could have been as it relates to the impact of COVID. And CEO Press is here, so credit to him for his leadership on that. Having said that, we still have, I guess definitely reduced revenues for certain things. We're moving into orange from yellow. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we're not going red. But all those things impact our revenues and the possibility of services, and also what it means for next year's budget. But there is definitely a sensitivity around what we can do this year, given the impact of COVID to people's household bottom line. So I hope that helps.
Thank you kindly. Just looking at the time, Mayor Lehman, you've asked me to hand it over to you. It's 5 minutes to 8.
Wait, yeah, and thanks, Lauren. You know what I think I'm going to try and do, Jim? I haven't done this before, but we still have a bunch of questions in the Q&A, and here's what I think we should do. I'm going to try and do a speed round. We'll do a Daniel Dale style speed round. So if I hand one off to you, we're going to try for that 1 or 2 line answer, and let me just see how many of these we can get through in 5 minutes, okay? Are we up for this? Okay, let's give it a go. Ed has asked, given Toronto and Peel region are in lockdown, is the city doing anything to prevent a large influx of people into our city? We cannot restrict where people travel to. Our medical officer of health has said, please don't travel from high COVID zones to low. But what we are doing is enforcing the screening rules at businesses, so that the malls, the restaurants and so forth have to make sure that they're screening. So it doesn't matter where you come from. If you have symptoms, you're going to be screened, and we'll keep that out, because that's the important thing. Whether you're coming from Toronto or you're coming from somewhere else, if you have COVID, we don't want you going into a business. So we're trying to do that through screening and pushing the screening by businesses. Wendy asked, speed cushion locations were collected on the City of Barrie website until November 13th. It stated submissions will be shared with council. How's the decision made about where they will be placed? Your ward councillor will be deciding that. So lobby Jim. But yes, we had that tool for input on where they should go. Decisions we made early next year, and they'll go out in the spring. Derek asks, how could we get people to stop revving engines when they drive under the Esser Road underpass? I don't have a good answer for you on that one, Derek. Maybe there's signage we could look at, but it's a pain in the butt. I know that much. We had a question about the panhandlers at that same area, SN Fairview, and I've seen that guy too, even last night. Barrie police do tell them to move along and occasionally have ticketed panhandlers. It's for their own safety. It's just not safe to do that, especially this time of year in the dark. So thank you for reminding us that you're seeing them there, and I've seen them too, and we'll remind the officers. Walter, yes, asked a question about the speeding implementation of photo radar. I think we answered that. Certainly it will come to council Monday night. So watch council Monday night for an update on automated speed enforcement. Questions about helping people get what they need to assist in transitioning out of, presumably out of the Comfort Inn. KW's done an excellent job. Yes, they have. It's all about those wraparound services when it comes to mental health and addictions, and certainly employment. We do try and help as best we can in the social service community. Jim, you might want to speak about that, transitional supports and employment supports and so forth.
Yeah, I think, there's certainly good news. There's lots of money being invested by the Ministry of Health for people with addiction and mental health issues, so that's positive. Mayor Lehman mentioned the county initiative that will be happening on Bell Farm, which again, transitional housing, moving people with supports into more permanent long-term supportive housing. There's new money coming down from the province for rent supplements. So again, that's positive. And I can tell you also, our council has been talking about creative projects to assist with, we have Lucy's Place in Ward 8, and it's a great model, and there's interest and from the county and the city to replicate that again throughout our city. So our council has definitely been talking about this and interested in, and we hope to have some projects that will be on this, help this in the future, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. COVID has the federal government's put a huge amount of money out. The newest is the Rapid Housing Initiative, and there's going to be applications for Barrie projects, actually in other areas of the city as it happens, but watch for more on that. Quickly, we've had a few questions around the fence, some specific details around the Comfort Inn, the property. Thank you for those suggestions. Yes, we can follow up with the property owner in the Busby Center. We will capture those suggestions that are in the Q&A. Big shout out. Thank you, Jim Harris, for calling back and communicating the way we can get garbage bins as they newly moved to Barrie. So shout out to a very good ward councillor there. Question about steps that are being taken to reduce the number of automobile break-ins in our ward. I'll start with that. Chris may want to add. Unfortunately, that's probably the most common crime all over the city of Barrie, B&E Auto. We have what we call the Lock It or Lose It campaign. Unfortunately, the very best thing we can do is try and remind everybody, lock your cars. It is a frustratingly high percentage of the time that it's unlocked vehicles. I've done it, and it was my turn one night when I left my door unlocked. The very best thing you can do is lock your door, because most of these folks are trying doors and opening the ones that they find unlocked. But Chris, did you want to speak to this?
I just want to reiterate what you said. It's just a crime of opportunity. They'll just keep going until they find an open door. And so the best way to combat that is just to make sure you lock your doors.
Thanks for that. Just a couple more that I can address here. Ed asked, what plans does the city have to bring in new businesses to offset our taxes? Actually, the city of Barrie is one of only 4 cities in all of Canada that has more jobs today than it did before COVID. Our economy is doing really well. People like South Medic, Napoleon have grown their workforces, and those are the big guys. Then there's actually been a lot of success in retaining, and even Jim and I were at a business opening last night. So we're doing pretty well, but the biggest answer I have for you there is we need a new business park, industrial lands that are serviced to help our existing employers to build new plants and expand, and several of them want to do that in Barrie, but also to compete with the Vaughns and Bradfords and everyone else who's trying to land business. But the other real thing we can do is help our small businesses to grow, because that generates a huge amount of business employment and demand for commercial and industrial space. And then I think we have addressed just about everything on the list, and it's 8:01. So I'm going to hand it back to Lauren.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. Thank you, Councillor Harris. If you'd like to make your closing remarks, we'd be happy to have
Thanks.
them.
Okay, and I'll give the last word to Jim, but just briefly, thank you all so much for attending. Great turnout, great questions. We've all had to try and adapt during COVID, both in our personal lives, and for Jim and I and Michael and Lauren and Nina and Chris, everybody who works as public servants. We've tried to find new ways of delivering services, tried to save money. And I want to send a shout out to Michael Prowse here, because we didn't really talk about this. When COVID hit, the city lost all our revenue in 3 major lines: rec centers, theaters, and senior centers. All that went to zero. We still had staff, we still had buildings. And unfortunately, we had to make some tough decisions there, but they were necessary. And Michael, I think, showed real leadership in managing the shifts that we had to put on with our own organization to respond to the financial pressures of COVID. You probably read a lot about the pressure on cities financially, and credit to the provincial and federal governments. They eventually did come along with funding, which has allowed us, as you've seen, to start reopening rec centers and bring staff back and cut lawns and some of the things that we weren't doing back in May and June. But his management as the head of an organization full of individuals who are committed to public service has just been exemplary. And Michael's really been the one every day on the end of the phone in the emergency control group, trying to handle the latest twists and turns of COVID, and an organization that delivers 60 different services. I think council has tried to keep things moving. We started meeting very early on in COVID and got back to the business of council early on. And I believe that served us well. We were able to do some things to try and support our business community, but more importantly, well, not more importantly, but as well, support all of you as residents. We gave people a bit of a break on their water bill if they needed it. We deferred paying any bill to the city for many months. And we appreciate that people did eventually pay those bills and have continued to do that, because it's allowed us to continue to deliver services to you. So I'll just close with a sort of general statement. I mean, we're trying to roll with the punches, and we're in the midst of a second wave that's already worse than the first, and we're going to have to buckle down. But the good news is we probably only have to buckle down for a few more months. I think that, you know, the end of this thing is in sight, but we got to save lives in the interim, and that's actually what this is about, because this is it's an insidious virus. It's easy to have it and not know you have it. It's easy to believe you don't need to care about it because you're young and strong, or otherwise. But it is very, very dangerous, especially to our elderly population. And that's our collective mission right now, all of us. We're going to tell our kids and our grandkids what we did in 2020. And what we should say is we saved lives by protecting our elderly, by changing a few things about how we lived our lives. And we're going to do that for a few more months, and we're going to get through this thing. So I'll hand it over to Jim for any closing comments, but thanks everybody for coming and listening.
Yeah, thank you as always, Mayor Lehman. Your support is greatly appreciated. I just want to thank everybody for making the time to attend tonight. And I did hear, and I think it might have been Greg who said, this is great, can we do it again? And I say yes. I think the opportunity to do this again in the early spring would be wonderful. So we can look forward to doing that. And if you're part of a smaller organization, organization or neighborhood association, I've had one town hall with the Tallendale group, and would happy to do one with your group. If you have a group that can get together, I would do that gladly. So, and again, you know, here we are in COVID, and I just want everybody to know that you are your own best protection system. So, you know, please be confident that the protocols that are in place, you can keep yourself safe. And one of the important notes, Rotor Hospital has not had an in-hospital transmission of COVID, and they deal with people every day, including people with COVID. So that means to me that if you follow the protocols, you can keep yourself safe. So please know that you have that ability to keep yourself safe and those that you love. So I wish the wellness for everybody that you connect with in your life and your friends and family. So thank you again. One thing that didn't get touched on tonight, although lots of time in the summer was spent on, was the beaches. So those of you who may have questions or thoughts still about beaches, there's lots of activity and interest and thought going into how the beaches will be managed in 2021. We expect a return to hopefully more normal conditions in our beaches. Obviously, Manette's Point and Tynedale were the primary ones of concern for Ward 8. given that where they connect to so closely to residences and the impact on those who live close to those beaches. So we respect and understand that issue. And also, and just again in closing, thank you again to everybody for coming. If you didn't get your question asked, you have my email, jim.harris@barrie.ca. Happy to respond, happy to connect, and thank you for your feedback as always and support. It's greatly appreciated.
Thanks, everybody. Stay safe, stay strong, and we will talk to you again soon. Thanks for being here tonight. Thanks, Sergeant Alpar. I just demoted you.